All right, so we're going to get started. This is a panel discussion that we have for moving from revenue management to offer optimization. You've already heard about the term offer optimization being used quite a bit in the earlier sessions. And so what we wanted to do is bring some great experts from the industry to talk about their opinion on what offer optimization is, but in particular, how we make that transition from RM to offer optimization. So to get us started, I'm going to have each of our panelists introduce themselves. So we'll start with Chamara. How are you?
Hi, thanks, Justin. So my name is Chamara. So I'm the group head of information technology for SriLankan Airlines, covering the airline, Sri Lankan cargo, Sri Lankan catering. So I'm responsible for induction of systems together with my business colleagues who are actually driving the revenue side of it. So we've been working with pros for almost 20 years now. So we adopted their initial RM functions in 2004. So we are looking forward to extend our portfolio with pros with much advanced AI capabilities.
Great.
Hi there, I'm Claudio Velez. I'm the CRO for Avianca. Our group takes care of revenue management optimization, network, and all the intelligence behind that. We've been 20 years in the industry. The past 5 years I was out of the airline industry, so a lot has changed. Other lot hasn't at all, but it's been a very interesting journey. And well, I was super user of pros actually, back when I was an analyst a long time ago. And well, a lot has changed in there. Very, very happy to be here.
Great, thanks. And Peter?
Hey, I'm Peter Belobaba. I retired from MIT last year. Spent 35 years there doing research and teaching, but research on revenue management, running the PODS Revenue Management Consortium. You might have heard our passenger origin destination simulator, supervising theses, doing conference papers, etc. I've been a consultant over the years to over 50 airlines on revenue management issues, and my links to pros go back, now that everybody talks about it, to probably 1987 or 88, just after I finished my dissertation. So I was involved in the development of Pros 1 or 2 or whatever that was back then. So.
Great. Well, thank you all. And again, thank you for joining. Just as a note, if we have some time at the end, we're going to have some opportunity for some questions as well from you. So start thinking of those as you go. So I guess to just get us started, we really believe that revenue management sits at the forefront of innovation and has been part of offer optimization from the beginning. So as we're changing the name and thinking about offer optimization as a transformation, how has your airline started to evolve? And so, Claudio, we'll start with you on that one. How do you think the airline's evolved over the past few years? As you said, it's a lot's changed, but a lot's the same. So how do you see that happening?
Yeah, well, definitely the change to offer an order represents a change in the way we work with the commercial activities, with the marketing activities, with technology. And we have seen during those years, for example, the branded fairs activities that had emerged and changed the dynamics. We believe, I particularly believe, that the revenue management function is definitely crucial for offer and order, being the neural element making the decisions on price and the definition of the characteristics of the pricing elements of the product that needs to be charged. So basically, I believe there's a change that needs to happen, and it's how we organize and how we make the decisions around offer and order. Definitely, revenue management needs to be crucial for that and at the center and forefront.
I think it's important to point out, over these 3 days here, you hear a lot of reference to the current and future offer optimization, dynamic pricing, continuous pricing, bundling, all these words, and we're ready to go there, but the question that it needs to be answered is, who's going to make those decisions? Who's going to calculate those prices, those dynamic prices? And the answer is, I think, most of us here are in agreement, it's got to come back to the revenue management system. Humans cannot do that. You need the automation, you need the science to do the calculations, the forecasting, the willingness to pay estimation, the optimization for any of those things that we've talked about, right? Especially and moving towards full offer optimization. So revenue management is got to be the backbone.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because we heard Joost in the previous session talk about, like, and his title is head of order transformation, something like that. And so it's very clear on the order side how that's working, but I think on the offer side there's less clarity. And to your point, Peter, that's starting to enforce that as an important part. So, Chamara, anything to add on those pieces?
So I echo the same things what the other colleagues mentioned here. Now, revenue management evolved over the period. It's quite extensively. And I do agree with Peter, it's completely should be driven through science. And the humans can't basically do that optimization along the complexities that we have. In particular, in our context, in Indian subcontinent, we've been forced to a highly competitive, price-sensitive market where you need to optimize the offers in a very dynamic way. So this class-free revenue management concepts and then offer creation of optimization, AI-driven capabilities in dynamic ancillaries. I mean, finally you get that sort of a unique, sort of a personalized offer to a given passenger. So I think we are getting ready to embark on this journey with pros, and we are excited to get those benefits in time to come.
Oh, makes sense. So I think that's a good segue into the next question, perfectly numbered on my card as well. So, I think there's a talk, we kind of agree on the kind of ideas of offer optimization. What's the perspective of the airline today? Your colleagues at the airline, the other departments, what are they talking about? Or are they talking about offer optimization today?
To be honest, the main point we are discussing right now is about the servicing and the challenges as industry we are going to face about servicing those orders, those offers, apologies. And the thing is, the systems and the technology and the infrastructure we have nowadays is very good for working in things that are inside the airline, right? The own flights, the own services, the own characteristics that we can provide to the customer. But when you go outside that bubble, everything breaks. So you're thinking about interlining. We don't really know how to service that kind of product when we try to transform that into a proper offer. Third parties, hotels, it's very difficult, and the process that goes out of the happy path, that's horrible. We don't know what to do when we have a third party that didn't provide the service. That is going to be a nightmare, and we don't really have designed the technology as industry to cope for that. So maybe a happy path sort of worked out. The unhappy path, that's the challenge we are talking about.
I feel like you bring an interesting perspective as a CRO because, and I'm not implicating your CEO in any of my comments, but just generally, there is something to be said for CEOs often have these really grand ideas of what they want to happen, and as a CRO, you're kind of responsible for taking that in. And I think the answer you gave there really illustrates how, yeah, it sounds like a good idea, but there's a lot of challenges along the way. So, Peter, anything to add there from kind of the airline side?
I forget which order we're doing this in, but the question of, you ask, what are people talking about, what are their perspectives? The thing that scares me about that question is it's good to have multiple departments, multiple parties talking about offer optimization in the airline, but in the end, what scares me the most is inconsistencies, lack of coordination, lack of, what really we're after here is joint optimization, right? That some airlines have, I think, made the mistake of separating out merchandising and ancillary, retailing from revenue management, and they both now have different objectives, different goals, and we know for a fact that maximizing ancillary sales is not the same thing as maximizing total revenue.
I think that's a great point. I mean, when you think about the fact that, ancillaries have almost become an e-commerce decision in a lot of ways because they own the product that's being presented to the passenger. So there is an idea that could be an e-commerce problem to solve, but revenue should flow through the revenue management department, I think is the concept there. Chamara, anything to add from your organizational side?
Yes. Now, this whole concept is embraced from the top to down. But as other colleagues mentioned, it has to be a strategy driven from the boardroom, in the very top level of it. But the main challenge that we experience is the mindset change. So how the e-commerce, as you said, how the merchandising, the ancillary departments, how everyone could work together with the same ambition of getting more revenue into this. So managing the revenue and optimizing the revenue, you need to have quite a lot of changes in the structures. So I would definitely suggest all of you to even get HR also into these concepts, because sometimes even chief officer of HR may not identify the real fact of all these things, because you need the expertise. And one key challenges that we face right now is the lack of knowledge, lack of shareable insights within the organizations, within the airlines, to see how we could leverage on these things, because it's trial and error. Concept may not work for airlines like in our nature, because we need to speed up the market and we need to basically embrace this technology with the first run itself. So I would rather reckon that, we need to basically, remove all the silos that we have in the organizational structures, where you have this revenue management department, e-commerce department, IT, or whatever the distribution channels. We'll have to consolidate everyone towards this one vision of, optimizing the final outcome of it.
I think that's a great point on the fact that, these ideas can start high, just like we talked about at the top level, but if you don't have the right expertise in the organization, then things can stall and they won't make it as far. So I think it's a really good point there. So when we talk about this, there's a lot of ways that you can approach this, right? So we offer optimization, great, we kind of all understand it in concept, but what sort of projects are you kind of approaching inside of the revenue management side, or to offer optimization, to enable the next phase of that? So Claudio, I'll start with you again on that one.
Okay, so there are many things that definitely we can do about that. In Avianca particularly, we have branded fares, and we have started that with the kind of static offer. We are launching willingness to pay in a couple of months from now. It's definitely part of the fundamental elements to have the working, and Peter said a little bit ago, we are still talking about that, right?
That's right, yeah.
And the solution is really old, but it's back to the basics and making sure that we have the basics well. We cannot optimize something very granular when we don't have the basics well established. Now, our focus from innovation inside revenue management are about organization. And as we were discussing, maybe the way we are organized is not the proper way to managing this new paradigm. What do I mean? Nowadays we have like demand analyst, capacity analyst, pricing analyst. Maybe that's not the way we should be organized. And maybe we need some function that are inside other verticals of the organization, as you would say, the silos, that would need to work in a different fashion. We are exploring agile methodologies to see if we can have squads rather than that kind of groups, deciding how to manage the whole process of offering and optimizing. And probably we need someone from e-commerce in there, making sure that the product that we are building, it's doable.
So Peter, why don't you elaborate on what you mentioned earlier with Claudio?
So if you think about, you hear a lot of people say airlines lead the way in revenue management, and throughout the history of revenue management, the science and the algorithms have far outpaced the rate of implementation, adoption, acceptance, and effective use of those tools, right? There are still many airlines in the world that are struggling with going to O&D, many more that are still thinking about or implementing willingness to pay forecasting. There's a session after this on willingness to pay forecasting, and my first response was, wait a minute, we solved that 15 years ago. Why are we still talking about it? But it's critical. The algorithms are there, and as we move to offer optimization and total revenue optimization, I have no doubt that pros and others and researchers will have the algorithms, but it all comes down to implementation, and training is key. Training, not just how to use it, but education, how to understanding what those tools are actually trying to do.
And Chamara, I would say the other side of that too is great. You come up with the technology, but then you're from the IT side of the business, right? Yes. So actually getting that answer from the revenue management side can be a challenge as well. So what are you looking at in terms of like, how does that fit into the picture of the actual technology piece?
Well, so from IT sides, we are the key enabler of this whole concept into practice. So we have to be very much, focused in getting the right technology to drive this whole, the concepts. So we've started quite a lot of, the very ambitious projects like, say, even migrating some of these legacy platforms into cloud, and also to give a platform where they can do something like a playbook exercises, which we discussed today, even in the morning. So then the revenue management team could exercise, they can run simulations, they can also get themselves, aware on how the concepts can be put into practice, and then they will be more, ready, and, they will get more confidence on the platform itself. So since you asked about some of the strategic innovation projects, one of the strategic innovation projects is, as he mentioned, is about the branded fares. So we'll be talking with our service provider with how soon we could go into that level. And apart from that, the other challenge or other key contribution that IT can do is the system integration. So we'll be integrating our RAV system with the pros. It's been already scheduled for next couple of, 3 to 4 months time. And with that engagement, we are also driving this change management procedures, as Peter Baba says, about the training. How we could basically, leverage on this platform so that we will start kicking off all the benefits with the go live date. So those are the lineup projects from Sri Lankan side.
That makes sense. Both of you guys have mentioned branded fares, and so I think that's an interesting place to go, because to some extent that is an offer optimization concept in that, like, you are bundling things together, you're presenting offers to the passenger. Now, whether there's much optimization going on in that is a question. But I'll start with Peter on this one, because you've obviously done a lot of research on this while at MIT, but then also experience with the airlines. Where do you see branded fares as kind of the entry point in offer optimization?
Well, it is very much the entry point in offer optimization, because once you define those branded fares, those are now bundled offers. So you start with the basic flight, and then various more elaborate and expensive ancillaries or amenities added on to that. And it is the first step. Far and away, the vast majority of airlines today that use branded fares are doing, as you say, as a static bundle. And I think a lot of consumers appreciate that. They come to know what that bundle is. It's a static bundle with generally fixed markups, right? $50 more, $100 more, $150 more. So I think the next logical step to me is to perhaps keep those static bundles, because you don't want to be confusing consumers, but you can apply much more dynamic optimization and differentiation across markets, across flights, across days of the week for those markups between the branded fares.
Claudio, how do you feel, like, from an airline side of things, what's the perspective on perhaps introducing more dynamic nature to the branded fare side of things?
There's a balance in here, right? Because as an airline, we make a very big effort to make sure people understand what those bundles are.
Right.
And that part of teaching the consumer to know what is in it, what they are buying, it takes a lot of our time and resources. For me, it's very important that we keep the ability to provide the known benefit for the customer. That for us, from the customer benefit, I think it's a lot of value. But then, after you provide the service they buy, whatever, the naked fare or the first for family, whatever it is, they can manage the booking and start adding up. They say, listen, I didn't buy these, but now that I think of, I will buy it. I think there's a lot of space in there for re-optimizing and providing more tailored a la carte products and putting some intelligence behind that.
I think that's a great point because the in a lot of ways RM is sort of not to undersell it, but is more focused on that first interaction with the passenger where they make the booking, and that's sometimes why the merchandising side turns into an e-commerce problem, right, or a marketing problem of sending out emails and getting them more touch points to sell them the other ancillaries that you have in mind. But to the earlier points, we want to keep that momentum of keeping the passenger engaged, and that's still a revenue problem, even when it's 5 days before departure and you haven't had a touch point with the customer since 100 days before departure when they bought it. That's still a revenue problem.
And just because you have branded fares, even if they're static bundles, doesn't mean you can't then try to sell additional ancillaries on top of that. A lot of airlines do that, and one of the demos in the main session there showed a good example of that. Someone who declines to buy a bundle, but then you keep trying to sell that person a la carte items.
Yeah, there's a point in there, if I may, and is maybe, and that happens a lot, after you do the first sale, you get much more information about the customer, and you are able to gather more insights about the persona who's buying, and that definitely is more powerful in terms of personalization, but just an idea about that.
Yeah. So now, gone are the days that we've been using these fare families and structures like that. I think it's a high time for us to change the way that we think. Now, in particular with the new gen consumers or the passengers, I mean, they need the liberty or they need the control of their own travel. So if airline is going to have their own offering, I think that's going to be meaningless. So we need to be more flexible to understand their consumer requirements, and it will depend with the time that they travel. So, I mean, probably you may have seen the opportunity for them to create their own bundle. So what will I get with my travel? Maybe the date changes at free of charges, or maybe whether I can get excess baggage fees or something like that. That's a unique requirement for a set passenger segment. So this is where the customer segments can be clearly identified with the branded fares that you could offer from the airline side. So I think it's high time for us to completely change the way that we think and then give more liberty to the consumer or the passenger to select their own bundle. So I think that's the way forward.
So one thing in bundling, and when you think of offer, and this goes back to maybe some of these CEO type of comments, is they want to shift the focus of the airline to being a retailer rather than an airline. So one thing that introduces the idea of is third-party ancillaries, so things that you don't sell. I imagine that's a lofty goal versus reality. So I'd like to hear kind of the feedback on where you guys stand on third-party ancillaries.
Definitely, there's money in there. We do believe there's money in there. But as an industry, we are far from having that included in the offer and dynamically pricing it. And my reasoning is how we deliver, right? You are adding a lot of pieces that are outside of your control. Vendors, providers, the climate. And those unhappy paths that I mentioned earlier are the things that make it more challenging for us. So as industry, and I'm talking at least from my company, we do believe we need to start from the very basics, from the own of the company, and start expanding that as we gain knowledge and have the technology to do so.
Yeah, the challenge of doing full up offer optimization and making it dynamic and dynamic bundling, et cetera. I mean, that's a big opportunity, but it's a big challenge. There's a lot of pieces that need to fit together there. And so, yeah, I would agree. You probably want to get some of that right, get the basics there right before you go to do things you can't deliver, right?
Yeah,
I mean, think about the change management problem of that, right? Like, generally, it's a change management problem within your organization, but if suddenly you're selling sunglasses whenever you're going on a beach destination, and then there's IROPS that happen, you already have issues, and no offense to the airlines in the room, but when there's IROPS, it gets very challenging for a passenger to deal with the customer support. But now imagine your customer support also has to handle figuring out how to refund sunglasses because you never made it to the beach that time. So I think that's an interesting kind of
that's
component.
that's an ugly post in any social media.
Yeah, exactly. It's already challenging with the situation of flying people, and now adding that extra retailer part, it's challenging.
Yeah, I mean, I do completely agree with you, because it's completely all right to set the expectations with the third-party ancillaries, but it's a challenge, as Claudia means, how do you deliver that, and how do you keep that expectation maybe to exceeds the the satisfaction of the passenger. It's completely a challenging thing, but it's a very good concept, but the implementation would be really complicated.